Contamination must be washed away.
Give up. Submit. Your life is
River carving rapids.
Give.
Let the torrent surge forth. Surge of vengeance.
Is this the end of Genshin?
Blaze over. No touching.
Let the torrent surge forth.
Rex Lapis, I am sorry.
Contamination must be washed away. Surge of vengeance.
We are all but one.
The torrent surge forth.
Next on the agenda. If you lie on the grass, you can feel the heartbeat of the world.
Brandon/Kevin. resisting. Riflemen exist to sit behind cover and pepper you with light damage. If you were to put them into a wide open space with no cover, you'd immediately just explode them and they pose no challenge. Same goes with snipers, who exist exclusively in the longer arenas where you have to cross a lot of distance to reach them. If they spawned in smaller areas, you just run straight up to them and explode them. Same goes for the monster variant enemies, which almost all run straight up to you and attempt to eat your face. These enemies always exist in areas with almost no cover because you need to be able to shoot them as they approach you, and if your line of sight was obstructed on their approach, then that enemy type would feel suffocating and unfair. Enemies in this game are essentially environmental assets. They are turrets that are strategically placed, or they are wind-up cars that are pulled back and launched towards you. Enemy AI in this game is really dumb because enemies don't need to be smart. They just need to know where to stand and what their lines are. The stage is set so that the moment you walk in, it's lights, camera, action. On the whole, this works extremely well. I would say that the biggest reason the campaign doesn't feel repetitive is that People Can Fly knew how to set up these arenas to always be engaging and knew how to move between the different styles of combat at regular intervals to keep things feeling fresh. I loved walking into a trench warfare arena knowing that I'd have to figure out how to cross no man's land. I loved walking into an industrial block knowing that I'd be able to utilize cover for a precious few seconds while I reload or wait for abilities to charge. I loved walking into wide open forested areas knowing that my AoE focused build was going to shine here as enemies hurtle towards me relentlessly. There's enough familiarity within the structure for you to plan your approach, but enough variance to keep you on your toes, and I really love that. There are some oppressive factors within this formula though. The accuracy tuning of ranged enemies is a little bit ridiculous. I mean, as soon as you pop your head out, every single rifleman just immediately snaps to you like they're using an aimbot. Snipers, oh my god. There are big problems with snipers. These guys can shoot you from like 6 football fields away, and they simply do not miss. And when they do hit you, it knocks you out of cover. So all the riflemen are like, yeah boy, this is our time to shine. The aggressiveness of the monster enemies as well could probably do with some adjustment. They just dogpile you so relentlessly, especially when you're playing solo, and they stagger you and they hit you, and some of them will shake your screen, so you can kind of get caught in this stagger loop where you just don't get the chance to aim your weapon and you just get shreked. These things all need some adjustment to give the player just a little more room to breathe. The last thing I find really fascinating about Outriders is its push-forward combat formula, which stands out as a really unique addition to the looter shooter genre. Push-forward combat is a term popularized by id Software when they were explaining the design philosophy underpinning Doom 2016. They argued that in order for the game to communicate the fearlessness, brutality, and power of the Doomslayer, there could have been moments when he was in retreat. Put another way, cover is for cowards, and the Doomslayer ain't no coward. The result was a gameplay loop that required the Doomslayer to glory kill his enemies for both health and ammo, pushing the player out of more passive modes of play and into a constant dance of all-out frontline assault. Outriders does something similar. Each class is able to heal itself by doing damage in a particular way. The Trickster and the Devastator heal from dealing close-range damage.
Do you spend more on groceries, transportation, or entertainment? Make seeing your spending habit
damage. The Pyromancer heals by applying burn damage, and the Technomancer heals from any damage dealt, since locking him into long-range healing wouldn't work with the way a lot of the in-game encounters are designed. What this model does more than anything else is turn Outriders into a game about momentum. When your character is rolling and it's just killing things to get buffs and it's mowing down fodder, you just fucking push because you are just getting so much healing all the time. In my view, this is actually the most aggressively implemented form of push-forward combat I've ever experienced. Bloodborne had it, but you only used it to recover health after you made a mistake. Doom had it, but you used your glory kills like a sort of punctuation mark in between your assaults. Here in Outriders, it's just this endless carnage that's never supposed to end. You are constantly just in this bloodlust state where you are just pushing your character to its absolute limit because that's the only way your class can get the healing it needs to survive. The flip side to this is that when this momentum is interrupted, Outriders can really break down in a way that Doom or Bloodborne can't. Health regen is capped at 50% if your health gets low enough, so if you're playing the Trickster and you're pinned down in a long area with snipers and riflemen off in the distance, you're pretty screwed then, unless you have some health regen perks or weapon stats that will allow you to heal at range. A simple change allowing you to regen to full health when in cover wouldn't break the game, and it would allow classes like the Trickster or the Pyromancer to regain their footing. in preparation for their next assault. The minor issues I've listed in this section, the balancing, the gunplay, some of the more oppressive enemy design, none of it takes away from the raw thrill of this game's combat. Every moment in this game feels like that scene in The Predator where they're just shooting and yelling, only instead of shooting trees, I'm shooting bad guys. I'm just unloading magazines and yelling and sometimes reloading and then more yelling. It's this feeling of power that these games are always trying to give us, but it's so complete and unrestrained here, and it only gets better and better the deeper you get into the end game. One thing we take for granted in this genre is the idea that the campaign is this thing that you kind of get through so you can then reach the end game, which is where you're going to spend the majority of your time. The campaign experience is less about loot and progression and more about mission design or set-piece moments, stuff that's trying to appeal to a broader audience than the Skinner-box-oriented players who are intending to stick with it for the long run. Outriders bucks this trend by baking its core in-game progression systems into the campaign experience, such that in Outriders, you're always playing the endgame even when you're not. The way it works is that items have unique perks. These perks range from the pretty standard get some healing when you do damage or improve your crit chance, right through to absolutely insane perks like your enemies' corpses explode, inflicting massive damage and bleeds on everything, or every 2 seconds you call down a massive lightning bolt on your target, or killing a target instantly reloads your magazine such that you never ever have to reload. These perks can appear on any item that drops, with more powerful perks appearing on the rarer legendary items. When you get an item with one of these perks, you can then deconstruct it, which adds the perk to your crafting pool. You can then put that perk on any other item you please. So you could have some shitty blue item that drops and you can put a tier 3 legendary perk on it just because you feel like it. Playing through the campaign of Outriders is the first part of your endgame journey because you're unlocking all of the tier 1 and tier 2 perks, many of which are just as powerful as the tier 3 legendary stuff depending on their effects or how you combine them with others. And even if you've already got those perks, breaking down items gives you valuable currencies you can use to improve the core stats of the items you get later on. Simply put, at every point in your Outriders playthrough, there are no wasted drops. Everything is useful to you, either right then or later on at the end game. That is pretty much the only looter I can say that of, and it's fucking awesome. Coming back to the perks, oh man, I just would say how absolutely, like, it's insane what people can fly have done with these. Insane in the best possible terms. Every new perk you get is like, what the fuck? How is that allowed? Surely that's not allowed. Surely there must be some kind of mistake. But no, the developers did it. And the magic of it is that the game still hangs together. It's not difficult to create a simple but compelling loot game. Ghost of Tsushima's multiplayer mode did exactly that, with really straightforward stats that augmented your class rolls. It's really hard to create gear this powerful and this complex without your entire game collapsing under the weight of it. This is what broke the Division 1 back in the day, where the balancing of items and abilities was so off that the game was essentially unplayable until the 1.3 patch completely rebalanced the game. Here, People Can Fly built one of the most audacious sets of perks we've ever seen in a game, and it didn't break the game. They got it right the first time, and that's just insanity. So, what about the endgame activities? What are you actually doing? Well, there's two halves to Outriders. There's the campaign areas, which are supported by the world tier system, and then there's the endgame expeditions, which have their own challenge level that you move up and through. During the campaign, you're going to be advancing your world tier. It's what you expect it to be, it just makes enemies stronger, and they have a higher chance of dropping you good loot. I finished it around world tier 8 of 15, and then I grinded out the remaining world tier levels by doing various side quests that gave me plenty of items and experience. Eventually, you're going to hit a point, even at world tier 15, when you can't get any upgrades from there, and you have to move over to the expedition part of the game to do that. You can get world drops that are at your level, and you can then increase their level using currencies that you get from expeditions, but generally speaking, this isn't the most efficient use of your time. As it stands, you're going to finish the campaign, and then there really isn't much reason to revisit those areas. There's a lot of unused real estate here that could have made the endgame feel fuller and more varied, and this game really could have done with an endgame focused adventure mode that kind of bounced us around the map to casually farm and earn endgame gear, but at a less efficient rate than the more demanding expeditions. Expeditions are similar to the missions you play through the campaign, but like supercharged, just totally nuts. Think like 5 times the amount of enemies of a regular mission and like 3 times the number of bosses. They typically have 3 arenas that you move through, and yeah, you just kill everything. Some of them do make you stand on a point, but that's about as complicated as it gets. It's just carnage for 10 or 15 minutes and then it's over. There's about a dozen of these expeditions, and they certainly are not created equal. The monster variant missions are much easier when you're playing in a group because you can basically just set up these blender compositions that can easily group up enemies and mince them. Playing solo though, you might find the militia missions easier since you can sit back and cover and pick your targets, or just take a moment to breathe without swarms of enemies constantly staggering you and shaking your screen. I don't think it's a problem that these expeditions are different difficulties or encourage different styles of play, because they're encouraging you to just change things up, rather than all expeditions having a one-size-fits-all style solution. The biggest problem with these expeditions is that the level of the loot that drops is tied to the challenge tier. So if I need level 48 gear to improve my build, I can only get that gear from challenge tier 13. Challenge tier 13 is hard if you're not geared for it. It can feel really unfair and oppressive and frustrating to push through these higher level tiers, especially when you're playing solo, but that's what you have to do in order to get gear at your level. There's no casual, relaxed activity you can play at endgame to slowly but steadily farm gear at your own level. It has to be these really intense, really challenging, higher level tiers, and that feels like a big gap in a game like this. The world tier system provides a template for the solution here. Just let people always earn max level gear, but give them more of it at the higher challenge tier levels. It worked during the campaign, no reason it wouldn't work at the end game as well. The other issue is the fact that expeditions are all about fast clears. The faster you clear, the better the rewards you get. That's fine if you want everyone to be focused on speed clearing builds. I mean, Diablo is kind of like that because the whole game, all the class design